Wow, it kind of looks like I'm doing a tier list here, but that's kind of not the point of this video. Wait, actually, can I not just... Ooh, this would actually come in handy. Actually, no, let's just keep it like this for simplicity. Oh god, I messed it up everything up. Hey guys, so in this video I wanted to do something a little more different than the usual stuff, as you can see here on this wonderful screen here that I have. I wanted to do a list, a personal list for that matter, of characters that I recommend for new players to pick up on the game. Now, as a player that is like starting the game, I can understand that seeing this many characters in the game can be a little bit intimidating, right? Because which character is the best one? Which one should I be starting the game with? Because actually I've seen people ask before, like, what character should I start the game? And which I kind of understand, because I know how there's so many characters, right? So sometimes we kind of want to know which character is the best one, which character is the funniest one to play with. And I want to give my input on what characters are the best one to start up the game for people who is really just like day one in the game. So obviously it's going to be just my opinion on this, so if you really have a different opinion on this matter, you're more than welcome to put them in the comments. I'll make sure to read them and understand your point of view. So on this list, as you can see here, there's only 3 types of categories. There's the yes category, which is characters I 100% recommend. There's the recommend, which is characters that it's not really 100%, but I still think you can have fun with it. And lastly, it just depends, which I will get to that when I talk to the character specifically, because sometimes it can depend whether you enjoy his gameplay or not most of the time. Just keep in mind that this is not a tier list. The opinions I have for these characters do not reflect whether I think they're like F tier or S tier, for the most part, personally. But also just keep in mind that if a character is stay on the pan recommend, that does not mean that character is trash or bad in any way. Every character here can like solo and perform very nicely on their own once you understand how to play the character and you get the hang of it. Like, if you know what you're doing with that character, you can basically farm like up to Harrier or another world. I was gonna say Void, but that's like a thing on its own that's like we're not gonna include it here too much, because that thing is just like literally another level in its own. The only problem really is that some characters do perform better than others in just basically clearing the level faster. So that's kind of how this list is going to perform off, and that's kind of how the tier list is also really perform with Grand Chase. There's no bad characters, it's just some characters do faster than others. That's just kind of how I see the tier list anyway. Alright, so without further ado, let's start with my main, Elysis. Now, Elysis is a fun character to play with, and it's a character that I always recommend newcomers to play because she's kind of the Ryu of this game. She's easy to grab it, she's a good hitter. If you're mainly playing with first job, she can be like a very good defensive wise as well, because she has like a many dodges that make her very difficult to hit. First job Elysis, it's like the best character to like solo PvE content, right, outside of Void, which I mentioned before, but which we don't include it here. Mainly because she has many dodges and it makes her very hard to hit. Her skills are usually pretty long, very powerful. She's a very good character to, like, if you're really struggling to fight and solo like adventure content, she's like the best character for you. Then there's obviously like the second job, which is like a very powerful job with many good skills that can, like, in the future can most likely one-shot enemies. Third job is also very good for mobs, mostly like mob control, but it can also be very well to deal with big enemies. And then there's the fourth job, which is the one that I play the most, which is like the big blade that is like more focused on enemies and bosses at the same time. So overall with Elysis, I will put her on recommend because she's a very fun character to play with. She's not the best character out there, but she is the one character that like can help you out just kind of get starting with the game, I would say. Moving on, we got Liar. I know Liar is not for everyone because Liar is the only character that you need to take aim to a lot of her attacks. And at first, Liar can be very tricky with her first job, but if you get the hang of it and you really enjoy playing with her, getting to the second job basically just nullify all of that aiming. Second job is just like one of the best jobs currently in the game, I would say. Very fast attack, very strong skills, very flexible. You can like use her for almost anything in the game and she'll basically do just fine. She is like an absolute beast. And she's such a beast for me that like you don't really need like any other job after that. You can like get the third and the fourth one just to like increase your stats in the collection, but like you most likely will be using the second job of all of them. But if you really enjoy the other ones, you're more than welcome to do so. The third job also really have good skills, has big AoE that's very good for killing multiple enemies. And the first job, I will say that it got a massive buff. This job has been mean to death, that is like still one of the worst ones in the game, but after like the buffs they give it, I think it's currently very decent. Not as better as the other ones, I would say, but it can very much break a leg if necessary. But other than that, I would put Liar on yes. She is a good character to start. Very slow, I would say, at the beginning, but after you get the second job is where things really get funny and very easy at that point. So if you really want an easy character, Liar is like the best one to start with. Next one is Army. I guess this one is very easy as well. This one goes to yes. First job is very well centered on DPS, mostly long range, very good skills. But after a while, Army can be like very good for support. She can heal people mostly, and she can kind of increase defense with another skill that I forgot. Then we got the second job, which basically is not very good DPS wise, but she does offer some interesting support with healing and free shields. I would say this one's pretty good. The third job is not his best one, unfortunately. It's very tricky to mess around with that one. And if we can compare it to like the first one, I think the outform for DPS wise is a little lower. But when you really understand how this class can go, it's a decent class, I would say, although it's extremely weird to mess around with. I don't really recommend using this one mostly because the other jobs are a lot more easier to mess around with, including the fourth job, which is basically an upgraded version of the first one, with much more better skills, much more better damage. Although I feel a few people would say that the first one is a little better than the fourth one, so it really does depend on the player. The only problem with the first job is that she loses a lot of her support, like healing and shields, which kind of becomes a little bit of a problem. But if you have like the switch job unlock at that point, then it doesn't really become a problem, because you can just run fourth job and then a support class as a substitute. So specifically with job weapon change, Army can be an extremely powerful character to mess around with. So that's why I put her specifically a yes. She's a very good character to mess around with as their first character. Last, I think, is going to be a very debatable one. If you don't know much about me in this channel, I don't like playing with Lass. Lass is a very strange character to mess around, and I've seen like starters try picking Lass as their first character, and it was like a complete mess. They didn't know how to mess around with the character too much. Lass just never really feels nice to play with, at least for me. His combos always feels weird. The first job specifically feels very wonky to mess around with, but he does have some good skills. He's a very powerful character that I acknowledge. Funny enough, Lass for me is the character that I like seeing people play. I love seeing him in action. He's a very good character, but when I play with him, he's like fucking ass. And I don't really blame too much on Lass because I don't have experience with the character. It's mostly my fault. But even then, it's kind of really strange to mess around with him. I just never enjoy playing with this character too much. And if you really hope that the other jobs kind of change that, unfortunately, the second job is it's not any better. It's a little weird to mess around with him movement wise. His combos are a little slow, which sometimes cannot be very good against some bosses later on. The third job is a little more decent, I would say, but it doesn't lack a good first skill, which I personally think that is very essential for a character, because the first skill is mostly can be considered as an evasive attack instead of just being an offensive one. Then thankfully we got the first job, which is kind of where things get a little interesting. Personally, I really like the first job because it is very good offensively, very fun to mess around with. The only problem is that it's super slow for a character like Lass, but other than that, I really enjoy this class a little bit. So with all that being said, I feel like he will be the first character I put on the pen. If you really just play around him on training mode and you kind of enjoy playing his style and whatnot, then by all means just make him your first character. But if you're not, like you're really just trying out, I don't recommend him being your first character, even though he is very good on its own. Though I will say that upgrading Lass is not a bad idea, because on his collection he does give critical rate and critical damage, so it is very interesting to go with him. But like if you're going to be like first main or anything, I would personally think about that twice before making him your first main. Moving on to Ryan, a very interesting character that I really like as well. Can be very well an interesting support for the team, while also being a very amazing DPS. He can revive people, which I feel like the only person who can do that is Lime, which it does require 3 bars, but it is very good to just be able to revive somebody for free, quote unquote. He can heal his totems. He can recover MP very fast. He can increase defense with his totems, which nobody uses, but it is an option if necessary. He can transform, which is also pretty nice. He can not only give him DPS, but it can also buff the entire team. I believe Werewolf increase attack, and the other one that I don't know his English name, from the second job, can increase defense. Transformation from the first job is basically just a invincible MP spammer, because he can just recover his MP very fast with single hits. Even without his transformations, he can really be a fun character to mess around with. Wouldn't say is the most powerful, unfortunately. I think he kind of fell off a little bit, But I still really recommend Ryan. He's just fun. He's just a really fun character to mess around. He has so much on his kit that it makes him very interesting character. If anything, you can kind of see Ryan as a upgraded, unquotes again, version of Alice's, because he can kind of handle himself on his own. He's a very good character to solo things. But the only difference with Alice is that he can kind of handle himself with heals and MP recovery, which is much more better than Alice's. Actually, now that I think about it, I think he'll put him in front of Alice's just because of that. If a character can like recover MP or HP, in my book, it kind of already makes him the better one, which, now that I say that, I feel like I should also do that too. Now we gotta speak about Ronan, which there's not much to talk about Ronan. If Ryan is the upgraded version of Alice's, Ronan is an upgraded version of Ryan. First job, Ronan specifically is like the right foot to start this game. He can do a lot of damage. He can buff allies with attack boost of 5 times, which is very good. Second job is a little more offensively DPS. He doesn't really have much buffs as far as I can remember, but he does very compensate a lot for his DPS, which is absolutely amazing. Then there comes the third job, which kind of goes back to the support. He can like make people take 1 damage for 10 seconds, which is absolutely great. He can kind of parry attacks, but it's like very complicated to get the timing, and in some areas it's not really worth it, but it's just so fun to do that. And then the fourth job is kind of back to the DPS, which it's the one that I see most nowadays because it's just extremely powerful to mess around with. Overall, Ronan is just absolutely great. I would kind of actually debate that him not being better than Army, because he doesn't, well no, actually he does heal with his third job, but other than that, I would still kind of debate that Army is a little bit better. But Ronan is 100% the very best character, in my opinion, to start this game. He's just really fun to mess around with. He's very easy to understand, very easy to play, and very rewarding as well as a character to mess around with. Now, Amy, Amy's a strange one for me. As somebody that's like really starting, it can be a little bit strange to mess around with Amy. She's technically a support that is more focused on DPS. She has some interesting damage as far as I know. Her first job is she can increase attack boost, she can buff attack, and she can heal, which is really good. Nowadays I think her healing is quite decent, I would say. Back then she only healed like for 20 or 30%, equivalent of a potion nowadays. But now I think they kind of mess around with that, and now she heals a lot more, as far as I notice anyway. There's some Amy's that like were able to heal me full health, which is pretty interesting. The second job is more DPS, folks. Personally, still one of my favorite jobs to mess around with her. Not very support wise. The only support I think she has for second job is MP recovery for the whole team, which is pretty nice. Third job, I think she can only heal, but I don't really recall. I don't mess around with it too much. It's a little more DPS focused. And the fourth job is, I think, the one that people go for the most because she can heal. She has a AoE that hits the entire screen. I'm pretty sure she can decrease attack, defense. She can seal supers. And I think that's pretty much it. I don't recall what else she does, but she does get like a lot of debuffs to the enemy, which is really nice. And while she can be very fun to mess around with, I think, unfortunately, I don't think Amy is like the character that everyone will enjoy. She's a really strange character. I even sometimes don't really like playing with her. Sometimes it can be very strange. It depends really on what job or whatever you really like playing with this character. So I will also put Amy on depend, but I do know she has a lot of potential for it. So if you really enjoy playing with Amy, much like Lass, you're more than welcome to try her. I would actually put her above Lass just because it is easier to move with her, and she has more options than just attack. Really, if you need like health, you can do that, or if you just need buffs, you're more than welcome to do so. I'm pretty sure you can also get shields on her first job, but I don't know how good they are, so I'm not gonna give too much of my opinion on it. Alright, moving on to Jin. One of the funniest characters to play in this game, just because he is all over the place. He's a very close combat character, very DPS heavy. All his jobs kind of do the same thing, right? So if you know how to play with one job, you kind of know how to play with the other ones. The only exception being the fourth one, which kind of takes a little bit differently, but ultimately it's just kind of the same with just different buttons. Very good characters. Like all 4 jobs are like personally very good to play around with. Maybe not the second or the third one because I still think they kind of lack attack, but I personally just enjoy playing with the second one because it's just really fun to mess around with. The first job is currently still one of the best jobs I think in the game altogether, because his first job is just do so much damage and it's like very powerful skill to have. He can dodge, which makes him very good, and I think that's pretty much it for Jin. He's a very good DPS character. I definitely recommend playing with him. I would personally put him above Liar actually, just because I kind of have more fun with him, and even though I think first and fourth jobs really just take the cake, but I still really enjoy playing with the second and third job. They're just like really fun. Sighard is a kind of an interesting one for me. Funny enough about Sighard, I think Sighard is very similar to Elisys. The two of them are very good DPS options, but the difference with him is that he's much more aggressive than Elisys. Specifically, his first job doesn't really have too many defensive options, right? Elisys can dodge and roll every day. Sighard only have a dodge that it's not really that good, I would say. He technically does have a skill that makes him immune for 6 seconds, but you basically don't really move when that happens, which can be a little throw off, but it's still a very powerful skill nonetheless. But even with that, I think Sighard can be a very fun character to mess around with. Very powerful skills that he has, specifically with his Fury, which is a specific bar for him that once filled, he like increases attacks, that he gives alternative attacks to his skills. Much like Jhin. Jhin also has a Fury bar that makes him very powerful and also enhances attacks a little more. Second job is a little similar to second job from Elisys. I think they both kind of share the same functions. The only difference is I think Sighard's second job is a little more slower, but when it comes to skill, I think he is the better option than Elisys. He does much more damage. His fourth skill is also pretty nice as far as I saw. Third job, which is the one that I enjoyed the most, is very flexible, very easy to understand, very easy to control, and very powerful as well, I would say. Then there's obviously the big one, which is the first job. He does also have very good skills, but I would say that the first job is like the harder one to get of all the Sighard jobs that he has. This character introduced the GF, which is basically you press the key at the right timing and Sighard will do an extra action that really helps him out immensely. Sighard, it really has like almost everything that he does have a GF that like you need to press at the right timing, otherwise you're going to be missing some damage in some way. His dash attack also has a GF that like if you master it, it's like it recovers a lot of MP as far as I remember, which is one way that I guess I can describe the first job. It's very powerful, it's very flexible, but it's very difficult to master compared to the other one. But even then, I do really recommend Sighard, possibly above Elisys, but I would actually debate on putting him right here actually, just because he doesn't really have too many defensive options like Elisys or maybe Ryan does, but I still think he is a very fun character to mess around with. Moving on to Mari, she's also another character I don't need to introduce. She's basically a beast of a character. First job is a little strange to mess around with at first, but like once you get the hang of it, she's like an absolute complicated beast that you have in your hands. One of her second skills basically just stay there for a long time. I would say like maybe 30 seconds. Unfortunately, the second job later, it's not the same, because if you hit it too much with your basic attacks, you get overheated and you cannot do anything. But other than that, I still think she has very interesting skills to mess around with. She does have a beam that I think goes full screen. I could be wrong about that, but it just probably has a big range. It's a very good class to mess around with, but compared to the other ones, there's not much to really talk about it. Then there's a third job, which is personally one of my favorites ones. She can kind of give people MP recovery through some of her gadgets, which is pretty nice. Her skills are also pretty good, but though unfortunately not as strong as the other jobs, but I still think it kind of breaks a leg. And then lastly is the big one, which is the first job. Basically, if you need something dead, you can rely on fourth job. There's nothing that can stop the fourth job. If you have a big enemy, just do third skill. If you don't really have third skill available, you can always do second skill, which is just as great. And if you really don't have any other option you want to mess around, you can always just spam the first skill, which is just really fun to mess around with. She can recover MP very quickly, much like Ryan's fourth job transformation. Her first job is just absolutely insane. She kind of technically have 2 AoEs depending on what area you're playing. There's so much I still can't talk about Mari, but like everything else is just results on the fourth job. When you get the first job, you basically win the game, because there's nothing that can stop this job. They debuffed this class so much, but even then they cannot stop the power that is Mari. So she is a very good character to get. Even without her first job, I would say she's like a very good character to mess around with. So she is 100% a character I can recommend. Not much than Ronan, I would say. I think she's less beginner friendly than Ronan, but even then I still think she's a very powerful character, even at her first job altogether, really. So now we're reaching Dio, and I think this one is a funny one, because technically you cannot start the game with Dio. You need a character at level 30 to be able to play with him. So I don't even know if I can include him in here, but let's just say you only increase a character to level 30 only to play with Dio. Dio, I would say, it's a very fun character to mess around with. but I always feel like he lacks a lot of damage. Very different to other characters. Dio has 2 paths you have to select for his skill tree, and depending on what path you select, will do different damage, will do different skills. And I would say both of them nowadays are very strong. Devil Force is a very powerful one, is the one that I always go for Dio. But for starters, I wouldn't really recommend on it because it does require a lot of MP. And for people who are really just starting the game, it can be a little complicated to mess around with Demonic Force, although easily not as easier as Weapon Force, which revolves around more on his weapons, and afterwards he can get more combos that make him more viable to stay alive in the game. Overall, it's just a more easier way to get for newcomers. But even then, I still think both paths are pretty nice. They're very good damage, very flexible, I would say. Well, not exactly a beginner friendly, because like I said, you need him level 30. I would put him at recommend, not as strong as other characters I would say, but I still think he's a very fun character to mess around with. Now Zero is a very interesting one now that I think about it. I was gonna say I'd recommend, but I keep forgetting that he's actually not a fun character to mess around with either. Specifically at the start, when you don't have Grand Arc on you, he's very flexible and very fast. Once you put all the Grand Arc, I think is where things really get interesting, because he gets super armor, which is pretty nice. He's not exactly fast on this mode, but he does have to do a lot of things that I personally really likes about Zero. He can change stances, which makes him hit harder but slower. He can go into defense mode, which makes him take less damage, but also basically destroy his mobility. He can transform or kind of activate his Grand Arc mode, whatever you want to call it. That makes him much stronger and faster. He can kind of also change how certain skills behave, which is pretty nice. He can recover MP, he can recover HP with some skills. Very fun character, I would say, but I think his difficulty level is a little too high, specifically how I think he doesn't have a good damage output. I still think he doesn't. He always receives like buffs, but these buffs really kind of still never will feel like there have been buffs. But even then, I will recommend Zero. When you get the hang of it, you really be like, holy shit, this character is actually pretty fun. And I really do enjoy playing with Zero, even though he's not the best tool in the shed. Now we're moving on to Rei. Very tough character for starters. I really don't like playing with Lei at the start. I really think she's a slow character to mess around with. Mobility is really strange. Her projectiles are really slow. Her skills are pretty powerful at the start, but like Rei has a really slow progress. At the start, she's like really bad, but once you get like the other jobs, she really start to become like an absolute beast. Because afterwards, you can get like be able to summon her companions that basically can help out Amat. When you get to unlock the other ones, you really start to paint Rei as the character that she is. She's a summoner that has like very powerful skills on her disposal. She is a very good character, I would say, even if she is very slow. But at the start, she is horrifically slow. She's very hard to get the grasp of it at the first, and I can understand how people will struggle with her a lot. So I would basically put her on depend. If you really love playing with this character, I really recommend playing with her because she's a really good character. But just be in mind that at the start, she will be lacking a lot of things, which thankfully it does get better later. So if you really enjoy playing with her, you really like her style, then she's up to you. Rufus is, funny enough, I thought he would be like Liar, but funny enough, he's the very opposite of Liar. He's not a range attack, even though he has 2 guns. He's a close combat character that can wield guns. He is AP character, very powerful AP skills, I would say. Even at the beginning, very flexible. He has a lot of dodges that now has 0 cooldown. Before you can only dodge for like every 5 seconds, which was really annoying. But now they remove all of these restrictions, and now he's a free man. Even at the start, like Rufus is like very powerful, and even after every job you collect, he just gets even better and stronger. That's why I put him mainly on Yes, or actually I'll put him actually better than Jin. He never really changes after every job. The only thing he gets is like different skills. Not much really changed to him, and I really think he's a very fun, beginner-friendly AP character of all characters, because AP characters, I would say, is like very difficult to master or to even get the hang of it at first, because they have like a very different mechanic compared to MP characters. Now we'll be on to hybrid characters. Rin is much like Dio. You have to pick between 2 paths with this character. 2 paths that Rin can get is the Light, which is more support focused. She can help people. I think she can help with shields and literally just jump height, which I think is the weirdest buff you can get for her. I don't know if they actually buff about most of her supports because it's been a while since I've been out of the loop with her. The only thing I know is that she can now do extremely good damage, and she really has very powerful AoEs that can really come to your disposal. The dark version is a little more different. I think she's more usable for solos. She doesn't really have much of a big AoE compared to light, but she still has very strong things at her disposal that really makes her an absolute beast. She removes all of those tornado attacks at the start and basically has melee combos that you can do for the other characters. Both Rins get like a buff depending on how many people are in the room. Light Lyn gets more HP bonus, and Dark Rin gets more attack bonus depending on how many people are in the room. While Rin isn't exactly my favorite of these characters, I do recommend playing with her if you really like her gameplay, and I do kind of enjoy her most of the time. At the start it just really feels weird because the tornadoes are kind of throw me off, but after like the second job, like Liar, she can be a very fun character to mess around with. My boy Aizen, he's my second main. I do really like playing with him a lot. The first job is a little bit limited, I would say. He's really not as flexible. He has similar things to Rufus. He has good dodges, he has good skills at the start. His special job can make him a little more flexible. Specifically if you have a hybrid Aizen, which is kind of what I have. He can counter enemies if you go for his special class. He can recover HP, he can recover MP, and if you have like the right setup, you can kind of make him have unlimited HP, which really, depending on the enemy you're attacking, really makes him very busted. Or if you really don't need HP, you can always make it MP instead, which makes him very offensive, heavy as well. I do kind of have like a mixture of HP, MP, and counter for my Aizen. I'm pretty sure Aizen is the only character in this list that has a counter. The one problem I would say with Aizen is he lacks a lot of powerful skills. King's Wrath I think is the only skill nowadays that's like useful for damage, and his other third skill, like I would say, really hits us harder as the other ones, but even then I still think personally he's like a really fun character to mess around with, depending on whether you do hybrid, first job focus on second job focus. I actually will put him at yes, just because he's kind of a version of Rufus, just a little more better, I would say, because he's an MP character, and MP characters are always a little more better than AP characters in my opinion. Lime is actually, it's a very hard for me to put Lime. She's extremely slow. Her attacks like take so long, you probably can read a book and she's still attacking. But the one thing that she's more about is her buffs and heals. She can basically give 3 different buffs. She can give mobility or defense. I don't remember which ones. I think it's defense. MP recovery and attack buffs. If you're close to her and she has like the aura activated, she can give you this specific buff. She has powerful skills as well that can kind of helps her out as a DPS of all things. Much like Aizen, she has a special job that also gives her more flexibility on her buffs and passives and skills. She can also be extremely powerful with her one of her third skills that I forgot the name of it. I think is Explosive Hammer is how you say in English. And her fourth skill, much like Ryan, can revive people. Although much different than Ryan, I think is much better because it lasts for like I think it lasts longer. The character doesn't need to be dead in order to revive. They can be alive for it. In Ryan's case, you need to have the ally down, not dead, just down to revive. Lime just revives whenever the character just goes down. Even then, she can also heal people, she can buff people. It's a very good character, I would say. And even if you really don't need the buffs or you're just playing by yourself, Lime just have options to play by herself with just a lot of skills. And even her combos, I would say, is like very good after a while. It is very slow, but once you get the hang of it, it's like not a big deal. Lime, I think, is a very underestimated character. I will put her and recommend possibly the highest one, just because she does have a lot of support that she can offer even when you're by yourself. She can be like very useful. Adele is going to be on yes. Adele personally for me is like Aizen, Elysis, and Sighart were fused into a character and then they boosted the speed by 1,000. That's Adele basically. She's fast, she's very strong. It isn't a hybrid, which makes her very powerful. She can get like 5 skills, which is absolutely insane. She can also decrease defense with an ability that she has. She can also recover MP very fast with her gun, which if you manage to get it, basically you get like almost a full bar. I still really enjoy playing with Adele. She's like a very good character to have and very beginner friendly as well. Moving on to Vegas. Vegas kind of have the same problem with Ray. He's a very slow character. He can really not start very well, but once you really upgrade the character is where he really starts to shine up the most with his damage. Mainly his damage. The thing that I really don't like about Vegas is his rune system on his skill tree, where he can get some different buffs followed by some strange debuff that sometimes I don't even feel like it's worth the risk, I would say. For instance, he can increase his damage skill in compensation of getting more cooldown or just wasting more AP. There's one that basically just, I think it's decreased cooldown in exchange of HP, which I never really feel like is worth going for, specifically for a character like Vegas. The one problem with Vegas is that he can be very fragile. He is a glass cannon, technically speaking, but if you can manage to play around with him, I really do think he's a fun character. So I would put him at the recommend, but it's like possibly he's like the lowest one for me. He's a very tough character to mess around with it, but one fun one to do nonetheless. Not as hard as Zero, but he's up there for me as a little tougher. To be fair, it's more because he's a glass cannon and not because he has any complex mechanics, really. Now moving on to the 4 new characters, quote unquote new. Dekane, my chaotic witch, my favorite chaotic bitch. Playable Dekane is actually not a bad character. If anything, she's kind of a fusion of Mari and Army, and make her basically evil. She can buff people with some skills that increase attack for all members. She can kind of get crowd control, which is also pretty nice. Have high range on some of her attacks, and after you get her special job, she basically can tune all of these stuff up by 1,000. She has a shield that can either block all attacks or recover her HP every time she hits somebody with it. She doesn't have AoE as far as I know. She has skills with very big range. So Dekane, I would say, I really do say yes for Dekane. She's a very good character to start the game with, although I think she's the less interesting one, I would say, because she's very easy to play around with. AI is very similar to Dekane in some aspects. Basically everything I said to Dekane kind of applies to AI. The only difference with AI is that I think she doesn't really have much of a support stat like Dekane. The only thing AI has is decreased defense through one of her skills, but even then you do need the special job for it. I personally don't think AI is better than Dekane, but I still think she's a very interesting character to mess around with, so I would put her at the lower, probably over here. I recommend it. Very much similar than the Dekane, so it really just depends. I personally really enjoy playing with her nonetheless. Kalia, it's my 3rd main, and I don't even need to elaborate. I think she is like the best character in the game, in my opinion. A lot of her skills have big AoE. She can put people on fire. She does have a bar. It fills up when you hit people, and the more people you hit, the stronger that attack becomes, and the more powerful the Kalia becomes, which she can then explode that and then increase her attack even more than that, which makes her very powerful. She does have a big meteor attack that goes into a vertical position that kills almost anyone that is in sight. Kalia is like the biggest offensive character, I would say, in the game, and it's very fun to play around with this character. Hell, I wouldn't be lying if I said I didn't enjoy playing with this character. Very beginner friendly, I would say. Then we got Uno, which was released a few months ago by the time of this recording, and he's also a yes for me. He can heal himself with one skill particularly. He can also decrease defense very fast, and much like Kalia, he has the 1 AoE attack that is like extremely good. He can apply bleeding. He also has a blood bar. Once you like press C on it, he can burst and then make even more damage. And even at the start, he can do damage like so fast. I remember when I was playing him like day 1, and I was like going through the level like so fast. I was like, Jesus Christ, this character is broken. And even then, like in another world, Uno can like solo like everything almost so fast. He is like very close to Kalia, and I would debate that he's probably better than Kalia. I think that can kind of be debatable. People would probably say Kalia is not better than Uno, but I would kind of debate that it is. But even then, I still think Uno is absolutely great for start, right? If you really want to start this game, he would probably be the best character that I could pick up. But other than that, here's my which character you should start with first list. I think I kind of covered all the characters the best I could describe. I know I kind of missed a few details here and there, but I think I kind of got everything that was necessary for each character. Just keep in mind as well, this is also my opinion. Some people might enjoy playing with other characters at first, like I mentioned last, which even though I don't really enjoy, he does have value as your first character. Or maybe like AI, right? I know some people probably start the game with her, or maybe Uno even, which if you start with Uno, congratulations, you picked the best character by far. If you really disagree with me or agree, feel free to put in the comments. I'd like to see what other characters you guys think that works best for start. And like I said before, this doesn't mean that any of these characters that is like below yes, it's bad. They're all very good characters. They all perform very well. There's some characters I think perform better than others in this aspect. So that's pretty much it for this video. If you'd like to see more Grand Chase content here in the future, or maybe another tier list if you would like to, feel free to like, comment, subscribe. We're doing Grand Chase content here on the weekly basis. With that being said, thank you so much for watching. Hope you guys have a great day today. Stay awesome, stay safe, and we see each other next time. Peace out.